Hi guys, in this episode I plan to go over an example of a random forest classifier. For the first section here, I'm importing the libraries. In this episode we're going to be making use of pandas to handle our data, matplotlib, which is going to be used later to plot a decision tree, and warnings to ignore any warnings that pop up. So we can run this here. The next section is actually importing and exploring the data. I've only done a little bit of exploration here. And here I'm importing a rice dataset, making use of the readCSV method from the pandas library, and storing this dataset under the variable df. I'm then making use of the head function to display the first few rows of the data. We can run this here. Just as a side note, please find in the description a link to where you can download this data and also view this code. So here we can see information about the rice. So we're given, for example, the area, the major axis length, the minor axis length, the eccentricity, and so on. And we're also given the class. So in this case, 1 represents jasmine rice and 0 is gonan rice. We can have a look at the distribution of our class by making use of the value counts method. You run this here. In this case, we have 9,985 instances of jasmine rice and 8,200 instances of gonan rice. So the next section here is data pre-processing, and the first step I did is drop the ID column, since this isn't going to be used in the modeling. So we can run this here. And then next, I split the data into our input data X and our target variable Y. And X here is just simply every variable apart from the class variable. And so I just did df.drop class. And then lastly, I split the data into a training set and a test set. And in this case, we're going to be using a test size of 10% and a training size, therefore, of 90%. So we can run this here. And lastly, I just wanted to take a look at the shape of our input variables and output variable. You see here we have 18,185 instances and 10 input features. The next section is fitting a random forest classifier. Here I've imported the Random Forest Classifier from the scikit-learn library. So I set the max depth equal to 2, meaning that each tree will not go beyond 2 levels. The number of estimators to be 100, so we're going to be building 100 decision trees. And the criterion here equals the entropy. If you guys aren't sure what entropy is, I'd recommend looking at the episode on decision trees explained. And then lastly, I fit the random forest classifier to our training data. Run this here. And for this next little section here, I just wanted to take a look at one of the decision trees in our random forest classifier. So I took an isolated example here by making use of the estimators method. So in this case, we're just looking at the first decision tree. And here I've defined it as classifier 0. We can run this here. And next we can plot this tree by using the plot tree method from the tree class. And I've defined the class names here to be fed into the plot tree method so that we can see on the decision tree the different classes. I've set the figure size just to make the decision tree more visible. And lastly, I've plotted the tree here. And for this, we feed in the decision tree, the feature names, and the class names. So we can run this here. And we can take a look at our first decision tree. So here we're looking at the aspect ratio, the roundness, the area, and lastly we see the outputs here. So we see here at the top the entropy is quite high, and at the bottom the entropy is quite low. So we can see here that this decision tree has managed to split our classes into baskets that have quite a low entropy. So this decision tree here may be quite a good indication that our random forest classifier going to be performing quite well, and we can go on and check that by evaluating our model. And here I'm looking at 2 metrics. Firstly, the ROC AUC score, that's the area under the curve score. If you guys aren't sure what this is, I'd recommend looking at the episode on evaluating classification algorithms. And we can run this here, and we see here a very high AUC score. We can also take a look at the accuracy, since our classes are quite balanced. We'll run these 2 here, and we see here a very high accuracy score. One quite useful thing about Random forest classifiers is the fact that we can take a look at feature importance. And here I'm producing a table that shows us the different features and how important they are in predicting whether a particular rice is a Gonan rice or a jasmine rice. Here I've defined a data frame where I'm looking at the feature importances by making use of the feature importances method on our random forest classifier. I'm setting the index here equals to the name of our columns, and I've just set the column name here equal to feature score. Next, I sorted the values such that we have the highest feature score at the top, i.e. the most important feature at the top, and the least important feature at the bottom. And lastly, we're just going to display our data frame here. I'll run this. So we see from this table that according to the random forest classifier, the most important feature in predicting the rice class is the minor axis length, and the least important feature in predicting the rice class is the extent. So that brings us at the end of this episode, and I hope you guys learned something new. Thank you very much for watching.